All right. Well, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Joe Padilla and I'm with Mental Health Grace Alliance, and which is an organization where we provide free mental health recovery resources through science and a Christ-centered approach so that we can help individuals, couples, and families to thrive. So we do this through our curriculums and our groups, which thousands worldwide are using to find more hope and even see transformation. So if you want to learn more and even download all our free resources, you can do that at mentalhealthgracealliance.org. All right, so today we're going to be diving into the journey from the spouse and parent perspective. I've got three guests who are going to help us get into the deeper insights and tools to empower and support our loved one's mental health journey. So before we get started, there's a couple of details I want to cover. First, you'll see that there's a chat button there. So along the way, during our presenters talking and things like that, you please feel free to chat comments with one another, encouraging things that you're learning or even picking up. And again, just an encouraging way to engage with one another. And then there's also a button there for Q&A. And that Q&A button, we're going to take your questions and we're going to use the last 15 minutes or so of our time, and we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can and try to address all of your questions because I know that there's more details and things that will be helpful for us to cover in the Q&A. So again, the Q&A is for where you can ask those questions, and we'll get to those at the end. So I want to first welcome Eric and Christy Weissman. We're going to have a conversation with them first. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Eric and Christy. They both have experienced the mental health landscape both personally and professionally. As parents of a child with a lifelong mental health challenge, they deeply understand the emotional toll involved. They're devoted to offering compassionate support and resources they wish they had at the beginning of their journey. Eric and Christy have been facilitating our Grace Alliance family grace groups, which is at this curriculum. And they've been doing that in the Southern California area for over a decade, and they are currently leading two active groups. They're also very active and involved in the mental health community, providing family support, advocacy, and raising awareness. They are passionate about ending the stigma associated with mental health and substance use. And they hope that by sharing their story, they can empower others to speak out, ultimately normalizing the conversation about mental health. And recently, they have founded a nonprofit dedicated to suicide prevention and awareness to further extend the impact and commitment in supporting others. So, welcome, Eric and Christy.
Hi.
Hey, all right. Okay, so hey, just before we get into some constructive details and highlights, and as your intro, you do have some background from your own family experience. So before we get into some more constructive things, can you share a little bit about your story and how did that get you into helping others, other couples and families?
Want me to go? So Eric and I have been married for 34 years, and we have four grown children and three grandchildren. Our oldest has struggled with mental health difficulties really for most of his life, although we didn't know it in the beginning. And we were very young. We were in the church, and we were dealing with a lot of behaviors that we didn't know what to do with. So we were reaching out to people that we looked up to in the church and that were mentoring us. And we were told basically that it was like it was a sin issue. It was our parenting, and we just needed to do A, B, and C. And, obviously mental illness wasn't on the table at that time. We tried to work on those things, and we were constantly trying to get feedback, and we weren't seeing improvement. And we were basically told there's something you're not doing right, or we would be seeing fruit by now. So, and then as he got older, his illness continued to increase. And he also, in his later teens, substance use came into the picture, which just added to the judgment and the shame. And we were completely isolated and alone, thought that we were the only ones dealing with it in our area. And that was, I'm trying to think back to what was your actual question and how we got into helping other couples and
Yeah, yeah.
families.
So the journey of with your obviously your son and obviously that you brought up some really key points there, obviously of not feeling understood even within the church community. We'll get to that in a minute as well. But then how now for your son's journey now mental health and then now he's got the substance abuse challenges as well, and so now you're seeing this kind of comorbid kind of
Right.
thing, the challenge happening, and so. And then how did things develop to where you are now helping others?
Well, it all started, like I said, with us feeling super isolated and not really knowing anybody else who was going through this. Then somebody told us about Grace Alliance and told us about that they have these family support groups called Family Grace. And so they gave us your website and we looked, and the closest one to us was about 40 miles away in a different county. But we were all about it. So we went to our first group and we were just, I don't know what you call it, but it was like a breath of fresh air. We met a group of people who were, they seemed normal like us. They didn't seem like terrible people, terrible parents. And they all got something that we were going through. There was just this ribbon of similarity to their experiences and ours. And it was so refreshing to meet another community and then to have it be just the curriculum, the community, the things we learned from the workbook and the group and others in the group and their experiences. And then we're like, okay, we're not alone. So we need this at our church. So we got trained as soon as we could. We implemented it at our church. And from there, we just continued to meet other families. And it's kind of snowballed, but it's just gotten to the place where we want to provide to others what we wish we had in the beginning of our journey.
Yeah, and now here you are, over 10 years later. I've known you guys since then, and like you told me the other day, I think it's been like over 70 groups that you guys have led with Family Grace, and it's probably even more than that. So you guys are coming from a wealth of experience of supporting others because you know it personally.
Right. Yeah. And we need to learn it over and over again. Maybe that's why we keep doing it.
Okay, so let me get into because as you said earlier, that Christian community trying to find a supportive and understanding, and then not people not knowing how to really help you. And again, nobody meant had ill intentions by telling you, it's your fault or bad parenting, things like that. I think we're trying to fight default things to help solve it. But in that lonely place, from a spiritual perspective, what were one or two key things you felt like God was helping you learn or show you through your journey?
You want to share?
Um, I'm gonna let you.
Okay. Well, one of the biggest things I think was it was in our Family Grace group, and it was when we got to the chapter on God is bigger than your weaknesses. And what was the verse was it's John 9 where Jesus heals the man blind.
Mhm.
And when they say, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents? And it was not because of his sins nor his parents, but this happened so the power of God could be seen in him. And that was it was a huge burden lifted from us, from all of the things that we had kind of received from the church. And so it was very liberating and validating. And then also for me personally, that just the Hebrews 10:23, let us hold unswervingly to the to the hope we profess, because he who promised is faithful, has been huge. Just not hope being a feeling, but hope being the person of Jesus. And our hope isn't in our outcome or in our loved one's outcome, but our hope is in Jesus and what he can do for us. And he transcends all circumstances. And to have that has
Mhm.
been just a huge anchor for us.
Wow, that's good. Anything to add, Eric? Or
Yeah. Well, I've we've desired to be in ministry for a long time, and I went to Calvary Chapel Bible School. I was a youth pastor. I thought I was going to be a missionary. And we had, a family. We had 4 kids, and, I had to work full time and all of that. Um, and it's just strange that later here now, God is using us. We attend Saddleback, Lake Forest, Saddleback Church. Rick Warren has this great, I don't know if it's a quote, but out of your greatest pain will come your greatest ministry. So, and God has humbled us. We've all been humbled. And so it's not the ministry that we were, thinking of, but God is using us. And God gave me a verse. It's 2 Corinthians 12:9. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. So we've all, like I said, been humbled, and it's not a bad thing to learn these deeper things of unconditional love and patience, grace, and later we'll probably talk about listening. We've learned a few tools. We had a hard time. As a dad, we sometimes want to fix the problem, and we're going to fix our son. And it was very challenging. And it wasn't until we started to learn tools of listening instead of trying to fix him that our relationship with our son made a big difference, made it a change, a turn. And our son has anosognosia, which is lack of insight. He does not believe he has a problem, thinks everyone else has the problem. And Christy will talk more about certain books we've read and authors and Leap. And we appreciate VAR. Anyway, so yeah, there is hope for us parents too. And I love the title, Family Grace. And we're learning what it means to give grace and receive grace, both to our son and each other. So in a lot of ways, I know as a husband and leader of this group, many times over, this problem in the family tends to tear marriages apart. So at the end of the day, we need to come together and be stronger together, and be an example to other Christians and other marriages that are struggling. And so I thank God for my wife. She's very smart and brilliant, and I'm just here to support her. You'll hear more about what her ministry and her work, and it's full time. We're pretty full time.
That's good. No, yeah, and oftentimes a lot of those scriptures become more real when we're actually in the pain rather than just quoting them, just as a. But yeah, they there's just a way that God meets us in that journey. And you brought up a couple of things there of what worked. So let's get into what we're not trying to fix, our loved ones, but what does work. And so you mentioned a couple of things there. What was it that started working for you guys? And started to change things for your relationship, and so some things move forward.
You're talking about for us or for our son?
Yeah, for you. So it's a couple of insights. What was one of the first things you started to learn that was a turning point to help you navigate this journey?
I don't know if there was one thing. And this isn't a Family Grace commercial, but it really changed our lives. Even just being able to go into that ministry together, just as participants and attendees, and learning, and then learning how to apply the tools that we were learning about each week. And there were times, depending on what kind of crisis and where he was at in his stability, there were times we couldn't actually apply any of it because we weren't in that space at that time. He wasn't in our space, he was in the hospital or he was on the streets or wherever he was. But we were still learning, and we were still together, and we were we were learning the biblical truths and how to apply those to our own lives. And the tools that we learned weren't just for us and our loved one, but they were for each other. They were for, other people. So just really, it, I mean, we obviously didn't volunteer for this. We were drafted, but it really did bring us together in a common area of passion and hurt and pain. And I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah. Yeah, and because and you're and so what you're saying is there was just tools to apply. It wasn't just pray harder, believe
right,
harder, have more faith. It was like, yes, let's put let's pray, but then let's also do some tools. Let's so and you
right,
mentioned like I mean we have our tool, the communication tool, which we call it VAR, validate, affirm, and reconnect. But then you also talked about Leap. That's from NAMI. I think they have their tools, or it's another organization that have these. I know I think NAMI utilizes that tool from another resource or something like that. So can you talk about some of these things?
yes. Well, so the communication tool is huge in the curriculum, and then along with that, because of his anosognosia, it was really helpful to read the book "I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help" by Dr. Javier Amador, and
Okay.
he's the one that created the LEAP approach, which is a way of communicating. It's a communication tool specifically. The book was great because we were able to learn a lot more about anosognosia and it's how it's different from. It's not denial because they're not denying anything because they're not sick. That is their reality, and so it really helped us understand better where our son was coming from and then how to communicate with him. And the LEAP approach, LEAP standing for listen, empathize, agree, and partner. And that, along with the VAR communication tool, helped us. It really did change the trajectory of our relationship with him because due to his lack of insight or awareness of his illness, med compliance and any kind of treatment adherence has always been really, really difficult. And so it's kind of just been this cycle of conflict and friction with us and arguing and us trying to tell him he's sick and he's telling us he's not, and it was just, I'm not taking the medication because I don't need it. And well, you have to take, it was just like, I'm not crazy, you're crazy, that thing. So it really helped once we were able to learn to listen to him and validate and affirm what he was saying and what he was feeling, that he felt seen and heard and valued, and it made him begin to trust us, which helped just cultivate or I would say renew our relationship and his trust in us, which made him better able to partner with us and us with him in his treatment moving forward, whether or not he agreed with it. It was helpful. It didn't always work, but it was helpful. And I have to say, the part about family grace and just learning and understanding the truth of what the Bible has to say about mental health and how it is all interconnected, and we are holistic beings, and how it's all connected, and how one part affects all the other parts positively, negatively. All of that has been just life changing for us.
Wow, that's excellent. Yeah, and I think, and that's as you were saying, it's how to reestablish relationship with within that, so that having the tools how to do that within their condition, even when they're pushing back and saying no, there's nothing wrong with me and things like that. So just in closing, for this, how important was community? I mean, you were driving 40 miles to go to a group. And this was a Christian group. I mean, there was probably, I know that there are community groups. Obviously, they don't, some of those groups don't have a faith background in it, and maybe it's more inclusive to all faiths. But can you talk about the how community played a role for you guys?
I'll chime in a little bit. So we've been Christians a long time and been going to church quite a bit. We've been in a lot of small groups, and when it comes time for prayer requests in a small group at church, um, we soon realized that we couldn't really share, or at least we felt like we couldn't share when they want prayer for their cat or something where in seriousness for many years we don't know if our son is going to be alive the next day. So um, I'd like to relate, yes, about how we've been accepted with the Family Grace Group, and it's such a relief. But also, I was going to talk about other groups, even secular groups we've gone to for substance support and mental health support and the secular stuff. And that was not very helpful. It's mostly, we call it a venting group where people just vent, and we super appreciate that we're able to go through a curriculum and actually learn things, and we kind of steer away from all the venting. You know, we're happy to listen to people after the group and pray. Anyway, so I was just thinking how going to Family Grace, it was probably similar for our son, where to be around people that get it, that accept you, and are there for you and can relate, and in a way maybe that's similar to how Nathan is now our son's name. So
we'll edit that out. We'll edit that out.
Krista hit my leg. So that's probably how he feels when we started listening more and partnering with him more, where he feels accepted and listened to. And that's what we also get out of going to groups. And now there's a benefit, and we hope the same for our son one day, that God can use him to help others. And so there's the other benefit of us now being able to be used of God to be a light in the darkness, and to help others, and
good.
Exercise this thing deeper called love.
Yeah, that's really good. Christy, any closing thoughts on community?
Yeah, no, it was just, I think community is one of the biggest answers for families going through this. We need each other. We need our tribe of people who are like-minded and understand what we're going through and can support each other and love each other through this. We don't have to go through it alone. I think it's huge. Just community is key.
Okay, Eric, Christy, thank you. That's there's more. I'm sure there's more in the well to your experience and things like that. We're just scratching the surface. But again, if you've got questions, please use the Q&A button to ask your question, because we're going to take time at the end and we're going to try to get to your questions so that we can get some dynamics really covered. And if you've got a very difficult question, ask it. We're not afraid to go there. If it's scripture or whatever, science and some of this stuff, we want to be helpful as best we can. So Aaron, Christy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And all that. All right. So, Eric and Christy were referring to our family grace group. And again, just this is our curriculum that are for families. And this is for free. You can buy the hard copy, but you can download this from our website. Again, go to our website, mentalhealthgracealliance.org, and go to families and couples, and you can find all those resources there. All right, so next is Dave Dickin. Dave Dickens is a good friend of mine. And so let me tell you a little bit about Dave. And he is a certified crisis text line counselor. He's also a coach and counselor with a recovery center for young men called Rockside Ranch. Sorry. He's a regular speaker for National Alliance Mental Illness Orange County, which is in California. And he's actively involved in his local church, missions, and ministry with the Native American community. Now, for over 4 years, Dave has led all of our Grace Alliance groups and has been instrumental in helping other churches start our grace groups. And Dave is currently leading our Thrive group and our Living Grace group. He's leading both of those groups right now. And he also volunteers and serves as our Grace Alliance regional leader, helping us provide ongoing support for our incredible group leaders within the West Coast region. All right, so Dave, thank you for being here.
Joe, thank you for having me. We've been looking forward to this for a while. Good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and Dave, you go for it, and then we'll come back and then we'll do some Q&A. So again, do your Q&A and chat along the way for encouragements.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Joe. Like I said, good morning, everyone. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I work at Crisis Text Line. If you're not familiar with Crisis Text Line, you can program the phone number in your phone, actually. It's 741-741, and we support people in crisis over text. So we get a lot of youth. And as Joe said, I also work with Rockside Ranch, an 8-month residential program for young men in crisis. I'm the director of alumni and family support. This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about family grace, navigating our loved ones' internal battles, and life together. The goal this morning is for you to leave this presentation with helpful tools and creative ideas to build life together with your loved one who's fighting internal battles. So just like Eric and Christy shared, we're building life together with our loved one who's fighting internal battles. You know, I got a phone call from a family that I met at NAMI in Family to Family, one of the signature programs of NAMI. They reached out because their 33-year-old daughter who lives with them was in crisis. I said, sure, let's meet up. So we met for coffee. We brainstormed. We chit-chatted. I provided support. They opened up about their feelings. And then they returned home with some ideas. Later that evening, they sent me a text message. And the text message said, hey, Dave, our daughter just walked into our bedroom and thanked us for meeting with you because we were trying to understand her. You know, friends, family, sometimes it's more about what you do than what you say. So mega kudos to you for making this morning's call a priority, because you're on this call this morning because you want to learn more about your son or your daughter or your mom or your dad or whoever you're supporting. You're trying to better understand your loved one so you can give them the love and support that they deserve. And let me tell you something, my phone rings almost every day from a family reaching out. And let me tell you something, families who call me and ask, what can I do differently, are the families that achieve the most results. If you were listening to Eric and Christy, you could hear that they were being pliable and moldable, and they were making adjustments so they can best support their son. Look at the serenity prayer, friends. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, like our loved one. We can't change our loved one, but we also need the courage to change the things that we can. Let me read that again. To accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You know, if you focus on what you can control, you will have a stress reduction. Focusing on what you can control reduces stress. Focusing on what our loved one does increases stress. Now, I didn't say it was easy. We're just giving you tips and tools. And like Joe said earlier, we're just going to brainstorm. But what I can tell you is when you begin to focus on what you can control, you'll start to see more results and less stress. Now, what are these internal battles that our loved ones are experiencing? It's a lot of thoughts, and far too often, especially from young adults or people with a diagnosis, or maybe someone on the spectrum, we're hearing statements like, I feel lost. I don't know who I am. I feel worthless. I'm not good enough. No one understands me. I don't have any friends. You know, I live in Southern California. I don't know, we probably have 12 million people, maybe more, and you don't have any friends? That raises a very valuable question. And then we often hear statements like, I can't. And one of the most frightening things is, I feel like burden. And if you notice closely, I highlighted, I'm a burden. And the reason why I highlighted that is that statement is it's a scary statement, because people who feel like a burden, they don't reach out and get help. They isolate. You know, if somebody feels lost, they might reach out and start to address it. But if they feel like a burden, they might isolate and not reach out. So what behaviors follow these thoughts? Isolation, self-medication, like we heard from Eric and Christy's story, possible outbursts of anger. And then what are the results? Connection loss. We talked about VOR and reestablishing connection. I'm going to spend the bulk of the time here on reestablishing connection, because your loved one has lost connection. You know, I meet with parents, as I shared earlier, and I'll get a call from a mom, and then I'll say, okay, let's meet and let's talk about your 14-year-old daughter, for example. So we meet maybe at a coffee shop or some neutral place, and I'll talk to mom and daughter, and mom will say, well, you know, my daughter smoked pot and she broke out of the house again, and we had to call the police, and this happened and that happened, and our weekend got ruined, and all this behavior, all this negative behavior. And I'll say, okay, mom, can you just like go outside for a minute so I can talk to your daughter? Of course, the answer is yes. And then I talk to daughter. And I say, so tell me, what's going on? Oh, my mom's mad. My mom's yelling at me. My mom, my mom, my mom, my mom. And I say, okay, well, let me ask you this. Tell me about your relationship with your mom. Oh, I don't have a relationship with my mom. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you go outside for a minute and we'll have your mom come in. So mom comes in, and I asked, so mom, tell me about your relationship with your daughter. I heard what you said earlier about this behavior, but tell me about your relationship with your daughter. Oh, I don't have a relationship with my daughter. Ah, so what if as parents, we begin to reestablish connection? What would that look like? You see, I don't want you to let your child's negative behavior damage your connection with them. The behavior is true, and sometimes there's safety issues, and safety is our top priority. If your loved one's punching holes in the walls or something along those lines, safety is still going to be our top priority. Okay, but the isolating and some of the other negative behaviors, like laying around on the couch, do your best to not allow that negative behavior to damage your connection with them. You see, I submit that the Bible's a connection story. You see, Adam had perfect connection with God when he was in the garden. He was in alignment with God, but he disobeyed and he lost that connection. So Jesus came to restore that connection. Jesus came to restore our connection with God and each other. And we see this in John chapter 15, and we see this in John chapter 17, and basically the whole book of John, because Jesus modeled and taught connection. So what would establishing connection with your loved one look like? You know, I'm presenting here for about 15 minutes, and I wouldn't expect you to remember most of what I said, but look for some nuggets. Look for a takeaway, like things you can control, or reestablishing connection, or listening, or some brainstorming tool that you could think on further throughout the week. Okay. Now, what do our children want? If we're going to best support them, what do they want? And Eric and Christy touched on this a little bit. You know, whether your child's 14, 34, or 44, they all just want to be loved. They want to be heard. They want to be seen. And what if we celebrate them? What if we celebrate our loved one? What if we celebrate our loved one, even in situations like what Eric and Christy described, where their son does not even recognize what's going on in terms of all these details with the diagnosis. You see, if you can accept your loved one for who they are, you just changed your loved one's life. The young men and the young women and adult children that I work with, they don't feel accepted. They feel like outcasts. They feel like an outsider. But when we begin to accept them, we invite them in. And then they start to feel belonging and they start to feel valued and loved. I submit, what if we put a crown on our child's head and help them to grow into it? That's right. Put the crown on your child's head first. I had a family reach out and I went to their house and the young man was about 33 and I said, "Hey, want to go for a walk?" And he said, "Sure." So we went for a walk and there was all this tension in the family, arguing, fighting, and disagreements. And so we went for a walk and he opened up about his feelings. And I said, "Hey, young man, you know what I'm going to do?" And he said, "No, tell me." I said, "I'm going to put a crown on your head and help you to grow into it." And he's like, "What? No one's ever talked to me like that before." And his whole demeanor changed. We have so much power, parents and friends. People fighting eternal battles can best address their thoughts when they feel better about themselves, when they have connection, when they have life-giving community. And as supporters, we can deliver that life-giving community. We go over this in the grace groups that Eric and Christy lead and that I lead and Joe's material. Let me draw your attention to one of the stories that really catches my attention from Jesus. We don't have time to read the whole thing, so I've highlighted a story we're probably, very familiar with. But in Luke chapter 7, we see a woman who entered a house, or Jesus entered the house, and a woman was there, and she was weeping at Jesus's feet. And her tears fell on Jesus's feet. And she wiped those tears with her hair. And then she kissed the feet of Jesus and she rubbed ointment on them. And the story says that she was an outcast. Let me tell you something, friends. As the director of alumni and family support at Rockside Ranch, and in supporting all these people at Crisis Text Line, they feel like an outcast. But yet, look what this woman did. She washed Jesus's feet. And so I ask, why did she do that? Why did she wash Jesus's feet? And most people will say, "Oh, because he forgave her." He did. But let me ask you this, friends. How did he make her feel? How did Jesus make this woman feel? I submit that Jesus made her feel special. He celebrated her. When I lead groups, I ask, "How does Jesus make you feel?" And they say, "Oh, special." And then I say, "Well, how does the world make you feel?" "Oh, not so good." Loved ones, supporters, how does Jesus make you feel? What can you learn from that and extend back to your loved one? You see, what we're doing is we're humanizing our loved ones. We live in a dehumanizing world, friends. I don't even have to convince you of that. But we can be humanizers. You see, Jesus was a humanizer. That's why she wiped or wiped his feet with her hair and kissed his feet and rubbed it with ointment because he humanized her. Friends, this is a nugget you can go home with tonight or today. You can humanize. Now, I'm winding down here, but let me share this with you. When I lead groups like in-person recovery, human sex trafficking survivors, restoration ranches, Pastures of Grace, another organization that I work with that has a ranch for ladies. When I ask, friends, hear me out on this one. When I ask, "How do you know if somebody cares for you?" That's the most response I get. When I ask, "How do you know if somebody cares for you?" all the hands go up. They all want to tell me how they know if somebody cares for them. Why is that? Why am I getting so many hands with that question? because there's tension, you see. There's a connection loss. And sometimes the connection loss is because unsolicited advice is being communicated. Get off the couch and get a job. You should do this. You should ride your bike. You should start playing your guitar again. Why don't you enroll in junior college or whatever? And maybe that's just not where they're at, friends. So maybe you could ask, how can I care for you? And let me tell you something. They're probably going to say something like this: just be a good listener. And then, like VAR, where we validate, we affirm, and we reestablish connection. So let me give you some key points to remember as we're winding down here. Don't let your child's negative behavior destroy your connection. That negative behavior is real. I know that. I get called into those places. I see the holes in the wall that the 16-year-old punched. I understand this. But find a way, be creative. God's creative. We're creative. We can be creative to reestablish connection. And remember, let me remind you, parents who ask, what can I do differently, achieve the most success. If you were listening closely to Eric and Christy, I heard them saying, what can I do differently to support our son? Even though he doesn't recognize this diagnosis, they're asking, what can we do differently? Focus on what you can control and listen to learn. Be curious, I submit. Be curious and empathetic. You know, I read a book and it said, listening, curiosity, and empathy cultivate relationships. When you're curious, when you're listening to learn, you're being curious and you're validating your loved one's feelings. And then last but not least, humanize. Remember, we're humanizers, and find creative ways to reestablish and maintain connection. Remember, our children are a divine masterpiece of grace. You have an opportunity now to share in the question and answer tab there on your Zoom tool. But if you have any questions for me directly, you can send me an email at dave@makesomeonegreattoday.com. That's also my website. And also, if you would like a copy of my presentation, send me an email and I'll forward it right off to you. That's dave@makesomeonegreattoday.com. And there's Joe.
That's great, Dave. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that because I think we often get this, kind of thing of let's fix, let's fix, let's fix, let's fix. But if we know how to reestablish connection, then reestablishing connection with love reestablishes trust. And that trust that's very vulnerable, especially when you feel like you're the outcast, everybody's just trying to fix you. So it's really good points there.
Yep,
Beautiful.
when you try to fix, you're actually reinforcing this thoughts of being an outcast.
Exactly. It's good stuff. Okay, so I want to take the last 15 minutes here and let's dive into the questions. We do have one question that came in through email first, so I'm going to honor them because they got in early. And it's a good question. And so basically they were wondering, what do you do when the whole family, the mom and dad, are dealing with a significant mental health challenge, and then it becomes clear that one of the teenage children is dealing with a mental health challenge as well. So how do you support the parents so that they don't go downhill for themselves? And then how do you get the teenagers started getting them help as well? So who wants to go first on that one?
Go ahead, Christy.
I was going to say, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I'll tackle that. I've got people in my grace group where basically it's sprinkled across the family. There's trauma, there's diagnoses, there's different ages, and each person is there on their own journey. We support them on the individual journeys. We focus on self-care, and we just support them as individuals. And all the rules apply: the humanizing, the listening, and I feel very strongly also that I don't think there's any limitations. We might see limitations, but people learn how to live inside of wherever they might be on that spectrum. So mom might be on somewhere on that rainbow, dad might be on another place, and the children on another. And maybe that's how God created us. And we can just all work together and just apply all the rules of listening and humanizing and like I kind of said already.
Okay. So yeah, so keeping them on their track of all the things that are working, and then starting. How do you start with that teenage? Christy and Eric, you guys want to chime in?
I guess I'm having a little bit of difficult time understanding who's asking this question. Like, would it be an outside family member, another child? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it all really just being there. And I think just being open and willing to support how you can, being open to learn, encourage, listen, humanize, all of that. I think across the board is applicable to everybody and just coming alongside to their individual unique needs.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive into these questions. One person said, "I live in Oceanside, California." They need to plug into any suggestions. Are there? I know our website we have groups listed, but not everybody registers their group and listed. Do you guys know of any groups in Oceanside?
So the group that we initially started going to that was 40 miles away was in Carlsbad, and we live in South Orange County. Um, Carlsbad is in North San Diego County. We were leading groups in Carlsbad as well for a while. There are currently no groups in Carlsbad or Oceanside that I'm aware of, but our San Clemente group, which is in very South Orange County, we have about 3 or 4 people from Oceanside, Encinitas, San Marcos, Carlsbad area that come up. So they can contact me and I can get them plugged in if they're willing to make a little bit of a drive. It's about half.
Okay. And do you have a contact information
I do. I
for you?
don't have it available right. I mean, I don't have it. Are you able to show it?
And if you chat your
Put it in the
contact,
chat. Yeah, I'll put
yeah.
my contact in the chat.
Okay, well, let's get to this next question here. It says that they have a son who's 28 in the process of applying for SSI disability, 2 refusals and waiting to hear back on another. The department's picking up that there's a substance use disorder as a possible excuse to decline. What's your experience with this, Dave?
Yeah, I would go to NAMI, Orange County. I don't know. Well, I shouldn't say Orange County. I don't know what this call is coming from. But NAMI, Orange County, where I live, we have a specialist for this SSI, and I would do that. And
Okay.
also, too, there's a girl in Northern Cal. I don't have her name in front of me. She also specializes at SSI. So whoever posted that question, if you want to send me an email, I'll connect you with my friend up north. Her name just isn't jumping out at me right now, but I'll get that to you.
Because I can block people.
Okay. So, and then what was the other question was, what does LEAP stand for again?
Listen, empathize,
Agree, and partner.
Okay, say it again.
Listen, empathize, agree, and partner. And you can go there's the leapinstitute.org, I think, is a website that Javier Amador has a lot of little short videos, YouTube videos, TED Talks to listen to that are super helpful. And his book is I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help by Javier Amador. And I can put that in the chat as well.
Okay, great. Perfect. Hey, and Dave, you talked about the Rockside Ranch. There was a couple of questions about that. What's the age group for that?
So we have a ranch for 18 to 26. And then we have another ranch in Michigan that's 30 and over. And I also have connections for some females. So if you want any more information on that, then that would be something you'd want to email me. And I'll put my email in the chat, actually.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay. All right. So the next question is after the Grace Group is through the 16 sessions in the workbook, does the group stay together as a group, or do they go on, or what's your experience? Do they use other material?
In our experience, I don't know about what other groups do, but in what we do is we typically because the curriculum is so it's topical and it's so you can miss a couple here and there and not be behind. You just pick up right where you left off. And due to the reason that we're in this group, many times people are not able to come every week. So we typically just roll over and go right on to chapter 1 again. And people typically like to go through it at least twice, sometimes 3 times, but we've had people that have gone through it with us, a dozen times. So sometimes it kind of becomes their community group, their support group. Other times they move on and they lead other groups, but for the most part, we just roll it over and we continue it, because that's when new people kind of want to start and stuff too. And
Okay.
For the
Dave?
most part, people
Sorry.
stay with the group, even driving, 40 minutes away.
Yeah.
We've had other people drive an hour, hour and a half. And we understand because we did it ourselves. I lost it.
No, that's okay. No, hey, Dave, you want to chime in on what do you guys do when you're done?
Almost verbatim to what Christy and Eric are saying. People start in week 3, and because each week is standalone, we just turn it into a wheel. So, but I'll change it up a little. I'll do like Living Grace, and then I'll do another Living Grace when we're done. Hey, you can talk about identity every week, chapter 1. So it doesn't going through twice. I mean, I'm the leader. I've gone through it like 17 times and I'm still learning. And then now we just changed it up and did Thrive. So there's various materials. It's a great question. And also Christy said it starts to become your community. She is absolutely right. I had one participant say, "Hey Dave, I wanted to get involved in this other group, but Grace Group has so much purpose," and he just comes every week.
That's awesome. Okay. All right. So the next question here is this is a good one, and I have another good follow-up question here too. So just really quick on this. This person says they have a loved one dealing with agoraphobia and with panic. So how do you help? How do you help them start moving forward? Start off with Dave. Why don't you start off with that?
Well, I would refer. I mean, Christy has experience in that area.
I don't. I have experience with anosognosia. I would think you or Joe would be great people to
So
answer.
say the question again. I'm sorry.
Well, it's they have a loved one who's dealing with agoraphobia, so obviously that isolation, they don't want to leave, and so when they do leave, they have a lot of panic. So there's a panic disorder with that. So how do you begin to help someone like that?
Nice and slow.
Exactly.
Nice and slow, and just be a good listener and just look for opportunities, when they do break from that isolation, keep them safe, make sure they're drinking water and eating, and be creative and just look for that opportunity when all of a sudden one day, they do want to talk about something, and just listen when they talk, and help them to feel valuable and help them feel comfortable so they can continue to talk. So one good takeaway would be any experience, any interaction to the best of your ability that you can have with your loved one who's isolating, make sure it's positive and repeat what works. So if something works to help your loved one who's isolating, repeat it. And we don't want to push. We don't want to think, oh, they came out of their room. Now they're ready for this. Nice and slow. They came out of their room. Let's celebrate and let's just focus on they came out of their room and let them, take control of so we want to give them agency and kind of just let them navigate it.
Okay. Yeah, I think just to add really quick, I think when somebody's in that position, is to recognize that how they really feel. You can't just pull them out because that creates more panic, and they need to have tools for the to move out of that, and the tools for the panic and the tools to break out of that because there's probably a social anxiety aspect to that. So I would try to look at the resources from online as well, the online therapy where they can get an online therapist to work through with cognitive behavioral therapy tools, exposure therapy to inch out of that loneliness. And then also I know we do, but then there are probably other organizations as well that offer the groups online. So we have a number of groups that are online as well, and that gives them a safe place where they can show up, and they don't even have to turn on their camera or anything. They can just participate through that way. We've had many groups where they just chat. They'll just be live on the video, but they'll just chat their answers and things like that. We want to give them the inches so that they can grow and see that build momentum. It's all about momentum. So, all right. So next question here is, this is a good one. How do you help an adult who's who's willing to get mental health care and support? However, they've had previous bad experiences with other professionals within that care process. They were saying we go to weekly family therapy and have good conversations, but have no outside connections due to symptoms from the untreated mental illness. So they've had a bad experience. How do they get back in?
Validate, validate, validate. Validate their bad experience and be a good listener and be a hope bearer. If you listen closely to Christy, she emanates hope. You see, when we help people, we bring in our personalities. So I bring out all the movement, right? So not everybody, I don't fit for everybody, okay? But if they've had a validate it. You don't have to trash the therapist. Just support them in their pain and then be a hope provider. Here's a question, actually. So you've had a bad experience with therapists 1, 2, 3, and 4, or community 1, 2, 3, and 4, whatever that might be. Ask this question. What would you want a good therapist to provide? What would you want a good community to provide? What kind of support are you looking for? Who would be that best person? What would you want them to do? Or you could ask, if you had a friend, I'm sure there's others that have had similar experiences, similar negative experiences with a provider. What advice would you give them if they had a bad experience? What would you suggest for them to do? So a lot of agency there in those questions.
Right. Okay. So we are running out of time, and we have more questions than we can get to. So I apologize if we don't get to your question. However, I think in closing, let me pull up one here, where basically I think that the question gets into how do I? There's a couple of questions within this as far as I feel like I'm enabling my adult child. How do I feel like I'm supporting their bad choices, but I don't know what to do. So can you speak to that aspect of when you feel like you don't know what to do and you feel like you might be enabling them?
Feel like get connected with community and talk it over with someone and bounce ideas and brainstorm. They're welcome to contact me if they want. I put my contact info in the chat. I think every situation is so unique and individual, and each time that happens, and sometimes we are enabling and don't realize it. Sometimes we need to pull back and figure out ways on how to empower them, and we have to be creative. And I think it really helps when you have other people to bounce it off of and work through it. I don't think there's one pat answer to that in my experience.
Okay.
I
Dave?
just wanted to add that
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Christy is a conservator for our son. She's got a lot of additional information if someone out there is struggling with some of that. She's had attorneys that ask her for answers. So anyway, just putting that out there, increasing the workload.
All right, Dave, any last response on that?
There's a fear of enabling, and I get that. But sometimes it's just part of this whole process. It's not easy. So try to define the difference between empowering and enabling and see how you could move away from enabling into empowering, which is actually one of the chapters in Grace Alliance where you discuss the differences. Try to understand that and try to move away from, I already kind of said it, but move away from enabling to empowering.
Okay. All right. Well, obviously, we do not have time for more. We tried to just give you an hour out of your Saturday to try to get some deeper questions. Dave and Eric and Christy have put their contact information in the chat. Please reach out to them. Just copy and paste that into an email, and save that to you. That they are a wealth of experience and knowledge, and a lot of insights, both from the Christian aspect and then just in general mental health and how that integrates. So tap on their shoulder and say, "Hey, I need some help." They're willing to help you and help you navigate this journey. So thank you for attending. We hope you have a great day. And again, if you have any questions about our material or our resources, again, this is the Family Grace. It is all for free on our website. It's 16 chapters, and it's filled with scripture and tools and insights and things to help you navigate the journey, whether you use it on your own or you can find a group or even start a group. And we make it really easy, and it's all for free. All right, thank you, and stay tuned for more events and other things that we have come down the pipe. All right, blessings.
Have a great day.